Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Rinkside. Emma and I are extremely happy that you could join us this week. Emma, welcome back. I'm really excited to record today's episode.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Today, we're going to focus more on the physical side of sport. And we've talked a lot about mental side. We've talked a little bit about coaching. So talking about the physical component, working out, what any age should be doing to keep up with their sport. Really excited to have a guest on that can touch on that. And as we've talked about in the past, when we were growing up, you don't lift when you're young, when you're still developing and growing. So that has changed, and we are excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, we've got Andre Signoretti on, and Andre is one of the partners at the Fitness Lab here in Ottawa. I think working out of the beach location downtown. And Andre brings a rich playing history. He's a former professional hockey player. He's come up through the college ranks, playing for Ohio State. And so I think he's pretty uniquely positioned to talk about this and provide some context. And one of the interesting things is, as we talk to various people in this space, meaning the youth sports space, the one thing keeps coming up. This is more. And I think what we'll hear from Andre is just that. You have to be discerning about how you do things. You have to be critical. You have to be skeptical, yet trusting of all these different people offering some development advice to your son or daughter. And so Andre's insights here are going to be really relevant for the parent thinking about or trying to figure out how strength and conditioning plays a part in their child's development.
Yeah. And even at any age, even for my team, it's all about balance. You want to make sure that you're getting the right practice reps in after games, you're recovering properly. The gym time is so important, but everything has to be balanced. You can't do everything at 100% or you're going to burn out or get injured. And so it's interesting to hear from someone in that field just what that balance looks like and what we all should be doing to make sure that we're getting the most out of those reps.
So this is a topic that a lot of people ping us with, and we'll be excited to hear about. Looking forward to our chat today, Emma.
Yeah, I'm really excited too because our guest today is actually my personal trainer. So I am really excited to bring on Andre Signoretti. He also has a history in hockey, but is the co-owner of the Fitness Lab and partner, and is here to talk today a little bit about the whole idea of when to start lifting and lifting in sports and all of that. So we're really excited to have you on, Andre.
Thank you so much, Emma. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Can you talk a little bit about your background? Like, how did you get into the personal training field and the fitness field, and what did that look like for you?
I basically fell into the fitness field. You mentioned, I did play professional hockey for 16 years in Europe. And when my career was done, so I had trained with a few NHL players during my time, Claude Giroux being one of them. And so what had to happen, long story short, was we used to train at Greco facilities here in Ottawa. And then when I had retired, one of the fitness Queensdale location reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to be a trainer because one of their trainers left. And within a week, I was like, okay, but I'm not certified. They're like, don't worry, come do one class. Then I did my certification like I should. And it kind of just fell into my lap. It was an easy transition.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, I've been training with Andre now for two and a half years, onto our third year. And I've seen like major gains, having switched my position. That is when I made the change in my personal trainer. And I've seen major changes in just my strength, overall strength, core strength, which is big for curling. And just like using your whole body as a unit altogether, not just individual movements. And that's been a big change for me, especially switching to being a sweeper. So Andre is very knowledgeable in this area, regardless of the certification that you're talking about years ago. Yeah. But we wanted to talk a little bit about just the youth level. Because when I was growing up, and it's probably the same for both of you, it was like you don't lift until you're fully grown. You can do athletic things and play sports, but you're not at the gym lifting. So is that how you grew up as well?
Emma, I grew up exactly the same way as you. You started training at, I would say, 17, 18 years old, because you have to let your, bones, muscles fully develop is what is what I was told.
Yeah, Andre, this is the golden question right now. I think a lot of people listening have probably already enrolled their kids in some form of it. If you're playing at a higher level now, it's almost part of the package that's being offered by many clubs, associations, regardless of the sport. But I think a lot of people wrestle with this. What should they be doing? When is too early? And what should I be on the lookout for? So when someone like yourselves comes and talks to my son or daughter, what are the questions I should be asking? So maybe let's go back. We talked a little bit about it, debunking this myth that you have to stop. You can't work out until you're fully grown because you're going to stunt your growth. That's been debunked. How are gyms and trainers and people dealing with it?
How are we dealing? Well, and I think the biggest issue that we have is it has been debunked, but now the opposite's happening is that where parents want their kids to lift heavy or start lifting weights at a young age. So, and when you define working out, yes, you can use weights, but it's all relative to how old you are and also how much experience you have, right? So our biggest thing when we get kids is make sure that they have the foundation. You have to know how to do the movement properly. You need to know how to squat. You need to know how to lunge. You have to know how to do a push-up, right? Before you can actually put a dumbbell in your hand.
So they're not coming in doing clean and jerks. They're coming in and we're working on core foundational principles, movements, those types of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's my interaction with my young son now is, to be on the lookout for that. A trainer that's not going to promise massive gains in squats, for instance, but throwing a broomstick on and going through the movements. And so I think, is that how the fitness lab has been working with young athletes? Because I see that you've got a great young athlete program. And is that your approach? Is that what all, good gyms that are being mindful of these young athletes should be focused on?
Yes, that is 1,000% our approach, especially for kids, is to bring them in and teach them movement. Without the movement, and I've had a lot of kids come to me that have been training, like let's say they're 15 years old, they've been training for 2 years and they come in and my first question is, do you know how to squat? Oh, I've been squatting with a barbell. And I asked them to show me and they have not been squatting properly. And it comes out later on, my back always hurts when I squat, right? So you're absolutely right at here. This is the first thing we do is fundamentals, right? We got to build them from the bottom up.
It's same with any age, because when I started working with you, I had back issues from improper squatting for years of it. So you get used to it and you do it wrong for a while and you can tough muscle through it. But then, it causes other things to go wrong. So that was one of the things we started back from scratch. And I wasn't a kid. I was like in my 30s, starting from scratch, relearning with just the bar to get the movement right and to feel what it's supposed to feel like to do it properly. So that's at any age. But we also started with a bit of an assessment. So is that something that you do also with the younger kids too, to see where potential weaknesses are to avoid heavy lifting in areas that could be a weakness?
Yeah, 100%. Our kids, everyone who comes to the fitness lab gets an assessment, but especially the kids. And we make it very interactive in the sense that they have their own sheet of paper. They write their name, they write their sport, what their goal is. And then we run them through the assessment and they fill out their numbers. We run them through stretching. Mobility as well for us is huge. How mobile are you? How mobile are your hips? How mobile are your ankles? How mobile are your hamstrings? That all depends on how low you can squat, how low you can deadlift. So all these things are very important, right? So then we have everyone's assessments before they start training. And when we do start training, I know that, Emma's a little bit tight here, but Steven's not so tight here. His depth will be a little bit lower. Always start with assessments just so it gives us a better baseline.
Yeah, and one of the things that's on my mind a lot is this notion of early sports specialization. And I'm sure the level you're at, a lot of the athletes you see are pretty serious athletes. If they're coming to you, then they're investing, a pretty significant amount in their child. How do you balance a workload over, let's say, an off season, a typical sort of summer, spring off season, with what they're doing in the spring or summer? There should be a balance, I assume. And so how do you manage that overload with early sports specialization, with the priorities that you're talking about, which is mobility, learning, and developing overall?
Ryan, that is $1 million question, bud. Right? And this is
under 1 minute.
Yeah, no, your answer is your question is unbelievable, right? But the thing we have to make parents understand is too much is not always better. So if we take our pro athletes, we got our hockey players, our NHL players, American Hockey League players, they'll train 4 days a week. a 12-year-old coming in does not need to train 4 or 5 days a week, right? So we try and also educate the parents where if the kid comes in twice a week with us to train and then skates maybe twice a week, give them some time off. They need some time to do their mobility and their stretches.
So this is fascinating, Andre, because you just described 4 days a week as being an upper limit for a professional athlete. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening right now going, ooh, where do I fit into this? Because little Susie plays soccer 3 times a week, and then she has swimming once a week, and then she does X and Y, and then now I'm supposed to introduce training on top of this. So you've actually overloaded your child. So how are parents supposed to navigate this? Because I can tell you, I'm a AAA coach, and so over the summer I'll meet with parents and I'll say, this is where your son or daughter needs to work on. But once they start to place all these things in the family calendar, they're up to like 10 touches in a week. How do you balance that?
This is, and like I said, this is the toughest thing. How do you balance that? It's basically like less is more. When especially when you get to elite athletes, you just don't want to run them into the ground, right? And I have a lot of younger kids that come in and they're like, well, I'm playing soccer tonight. I can't do this lift as hard. Can we go lighter? Well, my answer is, well, no, because you're here so I can make you stronger. Mm-hmm. So, and then that's when the conversation with the parents happens, is like, what is the end goal for this kid? And I still want them to do all the rest, because you don't want to just be stuck in the gym and in their sport. But you got to find a balance. You can't burn out kids, because I see it a lot. Kids get burnt out, and then that's when injuries happen.
I feel, yeah. So one thing too, I know you do a lot of group sessions with teams. I've always been curious because of playing on like the ice, if it's hockey, or on the field for soccer or whatever, in team sports, big team sports, you get into any environment and then it becomes almost a competition. Do you find that with the younger athletes where they're comparing numbers against others, even though like comparing numbers should never be a thing? Everyone is built entirely differently. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. But do you find that's the case with some of the younger kids too, is comparing themselves against their peer, and then it becomes like a tension thing, or trying to beat someone? Or is it kind of just amicable?
No, Emma, it's not amicable. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it always is a competition, right? And then I think that's what we set ourselves apart from other gyms, is if Jimmy's lifting 40-pound dumbbells and Jason cannot even come close to 40-pound dumbbells, he just won't lift it, right? So it's on his discretion, and we train all our trainers this way. Your discretion based on your assessment, what can you lift? I have your numbers. So justify to me, maybe in 6 months from now you'll be there, but justify to me how you'll be lifting 40s if in your assessment you did 20, right? So we're very on top of that, because again, that's when injuries happen, especially with squats and lunges and deadlifts.
Yeah.
Great question. Great question, Emma, though. You're right. A lot of competition.
Yeah. Even on my team, we've done some assessments, and it's like a competition. We're like, there's only 4 of us, and we should be like pumping each other up if you do well. And it's like, okay, well, I'll try the next one then. Like, give me another shot at it. And it's just the competitive nature of athletes is never gone.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, there's competition, but let's bring it back to like 12-year-olds. I mean, there's not a lot of competition between 12, 14-year-olds necessarily until they maybe get in the gym and they're watching each other. What should I be doing? Because, what Emma's doing over there with her son or daughter, I've just got to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. And so this is my concern, right? Is how do we manage this? I've heard you loud and clear. I hope others will, which is less is more. That's a really hard thing for parents to do that are on this track, well, as Eric Mackermalla, one of our earlier guests, said, a track to what, right? What is the desired outcome? The desired outcome probably shouldn't really go past summer, right? What is the goal of this summer? How are we going to spend our valuable time together? And what does my son or daughter need to keep enjoying it and keep improving? And so, Andre, I wanted one of your hot takes on hockey. So I've had a lot of people over the years come to me and say, how do I get my son or daughter to be faster? Which program? Should it be perfect skating? Should it be Apex? Should it, which hockey program? And I always say, go see, people like Andre, like get off the ice. So it is actually removing yourself from your sport to start improving some of these things. Do you think that's key, right? So if you're a baseball player, do you have to go in the gym and practice, exercises that work on the obliques? Or, what is that balance between sport-specific training for a young child and then just getting out of your sport realm?
It's an excellent question, because you're right. We have a lot of parents that come in here, and it's funny. They're like, my kid's not fast enough on the ice. Can you do fast feet exercises with them?
Right.
And then I have to explain to them, well, if I do fast feet exercise with them, but their legs aren't strong enough to do the fast feet, right? How do you get faster? So it's making parents understand, especially when the kids are younger, that they need to develop strength. But in that said, when you're 11, 12, 13, how much strength are you going to build because you're still growing? So it's a slow, gradual development of the speed. Yes, we can definitely do it. And just doing bodyweight squats alone or lunges and working on core strength will help you get faster. But you have to remove yourself and you have to actually build muscle and get stronger to be more explosive to then make you quicker.
When you say though, how much muscle building or strength building can happen, I think what I take from that is it's probably a bit of a different outcome for a 12-year-old than there is for maybe an 18-year-old moving on to the OHL or something in terms of how much mass or strength they're going to actually be able to build. So, what should be an expectation of a parent that signs up for a program like yours as their child exits in September? What are some measurable results that they should expect to see? So how would they measure whether the program was worth it for my 13-year-old?
All right. So one measurable component is how high can you jump? Really? You came in here and you can do a jump of maybe 2 feet. You left the gym in the summertime and now you can jump 3 feet. That's a whole foot you've improved. So what did we gain? We gained some power. We gained some strength. We gained some explosiveness. Push-ups. You come in, you can't do one proper push-up. Now you left. You can do 4. Well, that's a massive improvement, right? Push-ups are not an easy exercise to do and done properly, even harder, right? Chin-ups. A lot of the time we do chin-ups, especially with the younger ones. We not necessarily body weight, but we put bands on them. So if we started with a really heavy band for assistance, well, you drop down 2 band levels and you can do now chin-ups. So this is how we gauge the strength for the younger kids. Just a few examples.
One of the other things that I, as I watch and observe some of these different third parties doing, strength and conditioning training with young kids, the thing that I find lacks a lot is mobility and stretching, right? I think most kids that I see, we do warm-ups before games or whatever, they all complain about how, their lack of flexibility. Is this something that young kids should be doing? Is it premature? Is it just a habit forming thing? Where should that kind of stuff be introduced?
That should be introduced as soon as you possibly can. And I'll give an example to when I was growing up. So when I was growing up, is basically go to the gym. How much can you squat? How much can you bench? How much can you clean? That was it. And I'd leave. It wasn't when I went over to Europe that my first coach was Swedish. And he basically made me hold a broomstick over my head. And he made me do 50 squats and then asked me to do 50 lunges. And I couldn't keep my hands up for after my 50 squats. He's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. And this is when I decided to, he's like, you have no mobility, but I couldn't keep my arms straight. They were bending. So I learned that mobility really helps. Mobility helps with your strength as well. And a lot of kids that I get in here, believe it or not, they can't even touch their toes with their legs being straight. And if you think about that, they're not far removed from being kids when you can bend a kid's head leg behind their head, right? So I think the younger you can get the kids in mobility, the better overall it's going to be for their development and their strength.
And as they get older, it only gets harder. Because I know from my experience when I was younger, you can kind of do a little warm up before competing. And then after it was like, let's go. And no stretching. And the post lift or post game or whatever, stretching is so important for recovery and for injury prevention and everything. And when you're young, you don't feel those consequences when you don't do it. But then if you start then, you get the right habit and you get into that, then you're going to really help yourself for not getting injured later. So now it's definitely part of, even Andre's like, you're stretching, right? At the end of my lifts. I'm like, yes, I'm staying to stretch. Yeah. I always make sure I leave 5-10 minutes even at the end of every lift to be able to stretch. And at the end of games for me too, it's really important. Otherwise I do start to feel sometimes some pain, but even just tightness. But as a kid, it wasn't pushed. It was stretch, but no one would actually run you through it and sit you down and be like, these are the stretches you should be doing after a leg lift or after an upper. And so that was something I learned later. But is that in the programs that you have for these teams that come and train with you at a younger age?
It is. Yeah. We take them through all the mobility. So all the mobility is done by us before. And what ends up happening is cool. A lot of them have never done these kind of mobility movements. And then 4 months later, they walk in and they do it all themselves, all by themselves. And this is actually our goal, right? To teach them so that they can bring it with them. But yeah, it happens all the time. Really important.
That's some good habit forming stuff, right? Yeah. So one of the things we didn't talk about is you and I seem to have just missed each other at every stage of our hockey careers. So Andre played in the CCHL, it's now called. Back when we played, it was the CJHL.
That's right.
In beautiful Smith Falls. Legendary venue, if anyone's ever been to that venue.
Yep.
Whiskey Row.
Whiskey Row, yeah.
I was a 15-year-old trying to navigate that mental hurdle of drunk hooligans banging on glass at 15-year-olds. But then and Andre went on to Ohio State and played there for 4 years, I think it was. And Andre, I've been a huge proponent of the structure that college hockey gives, which is one that is puts a massive amount of capital on strength and conditioning training, right? And that's probably because of the way the games are structured, right? You play Friday, Saturday, you spend the full week preparing. That type of model, I think, should really be brought down to lower levels or younger levels, which is putting a premium on strength and conditioning, all the off-ice stuff with less focus on gameplay. We had Corey Murphy on last week. Maybe you know Corey, and Corey was talking about the Swedish youth hockey model, which is pretty much aligned with that. So, 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, they're kind of operating at the same level that college hockey operates on.
That's right. That's right.
So a long rambling way of saying, sorry, I do this, which is, and maybe I know the answer, so I'm teeing you up for this one. Is that how parents should help their children focus on youth sport for the long haul? Meaning, let's put so much emphasis on development, on strength and conditioning, mobility, stretching, and then just sort of see where it goes, as opposed to using strength and conditioning as a way to like whip their children into the pro leagues.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly, right? And let's be honest. It's funny that you know Corey Murphy. I played with him in Switzerland. Small world, eh?
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
The hockey world.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I know. But you're absolutely right, because if we look at the percentage, and I think the problem is a lot of parents like my son, my daughter, they're going big time. So the emphasis is on the actual sport. But if you break it down and look at the percentages of people that make it big, so let's do the opposite. Let's work on the fundamentals for the physical side. Get your child knowing how to work out. Get them with the proper mobility at a young age, so that regardless what happens in their sport career, they have a foundation for working out for the rest of their lives. And it's a good, safe one.
Yeah, because I think one of the things why people think that their children are, quote unquote, going places at 9 years old is because they're bigger, or maybe they're faster, just naturally. But then by the time they hit 13, some of these habits that you're talking about is what starts to take over and drive that later success. And so I think what you're saying here is focus on these things so that when they hit these critical ages of like 13 to 16, that's what'll take them forward. And I bet you at 13, you weren't thinking about playing in Europe professionally. It wasn't even on my radar. Until much later. Now kids are being told by their parents, this is why we're doing this. We got to get you a D1 scholarship.
That's right.
What's D1?
What's D1 exactly?
Yeah.
No, I agree. It makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
Even just normalizing working out from a young age, just for overall well-being versus your child going somewhere. I did a lot of sports, but I would just go for a run, or I didn't actually lift. And then I had to kind of learn it a little bit later, as all of us did, because you weren't supposed to lift too young. But even some movements that were tough, I would just avoid them because I was working out by myself. And instead of going into an environment where it's like normalized that we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and being able to like, this is my strength and that's your weakness, but my weakness is your strength. And that's so normal, but that's not something that we like normalized when we were younger. It was just like, you're bad at this, and you focus on it. And then if I was alone, I'm like, well, I'm not doing that. Like, I could not do push-ups to start when I started lifting at all. Maybe a couple from my feet, and it was a struggle. So that was a movement I just avoided because I hated being bad at it instead of trying to work at it and going into like a fun gym environment where you just, it's okay to be bad at something and just work at it. And I mean, did over a lot of years. And now it still isn't my favorite movement, but I can do them. I can do a good amount of them. So I think just like learning that it's not about like where they're going, but learning good practices, and working out is healthy for everybody, not just athletes. So at a young age, getting in the gym and learning that it can be fun, I think is just a good practice for everyone.
I agree.
Yeah.
I do, Emma. And your push-ups are great, by the way.
Thanks. It took a lot of time.
Yeah, it did.
Well, Andre, if there are people listening who are sort of on the fence here and trying to be persuaded, I think you've done a really nice job of maybe debunking some things about it, removing some of the scare factor around it, that this is all just too serious. We had a similar conversation around mental performance consulting, and I think that's another area that people are sort of looking at somewhat skeptically, somewhat interestingly, trying to figure out where their entry point is. And so I think you've done a great job in helping people understand a little bit more about what it means to have a young athlete train, and how that fits into the bigger picture.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So thank you very much. I know you're
very
working with
welcome.
young athletes, and they're very fortunate to have you. And we'll let you get back to doing what you do best, which is training these young athletes. And really thank you for
All right.
being on Rinkside today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Ryan.
Joining.
And
You're welcome.
maybe
Thank you,
one
Emma.
last thing. One last thing. Who is a better D-man, you or Corey?
How about we're pretty close? I'm gonna give it to Corey. NHL bound.
Class
Give it to
act.
Corey.
Class act.
Yeah.
Class act.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now we can share this episode with him.
Yeah.
You can definitely.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Andre. Well, thank you. That was really, really interesting listening to Andre talk about all these topics. And, that was only about half an hour. So it feels like we could have gone on for hours diving into some of these more intricate details about strength and conditioning for youth athletes. I think one of the things that I take away is that everything just continues to evolve and change. And the things that are available to young athletes now are so much more different and, better, frankly, than the way we had it growing up with it. I know for me, Emma, strength and conditioning was something that you sort of had to do on your own and figure out how to introduce it, and go to your local gym and trust that someone there was really looking out for your best long-term interests. Mm-hmm. And so it's reassuring, I suppose, on one hand, as a parent, to know that there's people out there and gyms out there like Andre in the Fitness Lab, and there's many others in Ottawa that are doing right by these younger athletes and paying attention to how the strength and conditioning is going to impact them, not just this week, but also next year and 5 years from now.
100%. I think growing up, I did a few sessions of personal training that my mom got just to learn what to do at the gym, but then ended up trying to do things on my own. And it's so hard because if you're doing a movement wrong, such as a squat, like we talked about, and you do a movement wrong for enough time, you learn that wrong movement, but it's really could impact whether you get injured, the other areas of strength. And for me, I did end up getting a lower back injury from doing a movement wrong for so many years. So and then restarting at the Fitness Lab with Andre, he's like, we're starting from just the bar. And I was like, I don't want to use just the bar. I'm way stronger than that. I've been doing this for years. He said, we're starting with just the bar. He's like, once I see that you're doing the movement properly, then we'll start adding weight. And I actually started from nothing back up to lifting heavy again, but doing it right. And I haven't had any injuries with my lower back since. So it's all about just, we're doing these movements to get stronger, but we have to be doing them right. And having someone to oversee, even in group sessions, and make sure that everyone's doing those movements right, I think is really important, especially from a young age. So what they're doing at the gym is great. Those group sessions are great. They also have classes there. So there's all sorts of different levels of affordability when it comes to going to the gym. And I know that that's a big factor, but just having someone who knows what they're doing to oversee your movement and make sure you're doing it right, I think it only help as a young athlete. And even for me at my age too, it's still so helpful. It's like, nope, you're not doing that. You're shrugging your shoulders. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know. So I think that, I'm hoping that everyone kind of got something out of this, that it's not about getting into the gym every single day. It's about doing the right gym sessions and fitting it in properly to your schedule.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. I think a lot of people listening are hopefully, for those families who haven't done this yet, who haven't introduced this part of, I think I've been calling it the development matrix, like the development toolbox. It is a really critical one. And I think, as you've said, Emma, there's a lot of different entry points. There's ones that are more expensive, certainly. There's other more affordable options. But it really does factor in that longer term athlete development model, which I think more families need to pay attention to. Because as we talked about with Andre, once you add this, if you're not taking something out, if you're adding strength and conditioning on top of soccer practices, baseball practices, and you're not allowing your children time to be children, to recover, to actually use strength and conditioning to prevent injury, not cause it, then you're hitting that sweet spot. And so I hope today allows some parents to look at this as they did with Jason Boivin and the mental performance side. There's more out there than just booking more and more reps and training in your sports specific area.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that everybody's different, every body type is different, and everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. So don't compare yourself to your peers.
That's right.
I think it's just compare yourself to yourself, compare yourself to your own numbers, do testing, and then just try to improve on your own numbers. But don't compare yourself to someone that you are not, because we are all different. And I know I did that and still do that. And it's only to my own detriment. So a little piece of advice.
That's a great reminder. I think you can get carried away sometimes by looking over your left shoulder and right shoulder and seeing how much someone's lifting or how fast they sprint or whatever the metric is. And I think you're bang on. This is a you thing. We all have different progressions and different milestones, and it's a great reminder, Emma.
Great.
So with that, another great episode. Very, very, we're very lucky to have people like Andre stepping up to talk to our Rinkside families and go along on this journey with us. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.